Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Rita Bacuzzi, and I want to welcome you to Taboo Talk. All right, really, what is Taboo Talk? It is that talk, that discussion that we don't want to have, that's not appropriate. We go through our lives with hearing those words all the time. And so, what I want to do, my vision is to create change. And the only way we can create change is by being revolutionary. And can you imagine that talking would be a revolutionary idea? Well, it is. And we want to create a society that is comfortable in uncomfortable conversations. It's those taboo topics of life, achieving breakthroughs and living life in abundance and brilliance, and doing it in a village where we're safe to have these conversations without judgment, without shame, without blame, and engage with empowering women and men in breakthrough conversations around these taboo talks so that this way we get to, and hear my words because words are so important, we get to transition, transform, and flourish with confidence the way we think and the way we act and how we show up in the world. Definitely with COVID, we're seeing how people are showing up. For some, it's not so great. But if we can have calm, confident conversations, be courageous about them, that doesn't mean that we don't have to be a little nervous or scared. But if we come across with kindness and questions and curiosity on both sides of the conversation, that's where we get to flourish. So if you're looking to gain confidence and be empowered in your conversations around topics, our experts, our local experts and friends in your neighborhoods will address how to use your words and gain perspective and take action to be more insightful with positive, impactful influence in your world. So with that, we'll start our show starter, and then I will introduce our guests. So I'm going to leave you hanging for just a little. Welcome, everybody. I want to say thank you for taking the time to joining us here at Taboo Talk tonight. And look at that, I'm getting tongue-tied right around my words. So really tonight, I want to introduce a dear friend of mine, Mia Tepper. And Mia is, she went back to UCLA and she got her MBA in international management at the Anderson School of Business. And she served as her class president there. And Mia's worked actually at the Life Science Interscience Institute for almost 30 years. And her favorite part of her day is advocating for patients and caregivers. That's an area where Mia and I resonated on. It's about being advocates for one another in the world. And I think one of the best places where I feel like we can serve right now is if we start to get comfortable with our conversations in supporting one another and sharing our perspectives in viewpoints in ways where we impact others with positive influence. And so she is a president of the board at the Association of Catholic Student Councils, and she does leadership training for middle and high school, I'm going to say young adult students. It's about empowering our adults to be leaders today. And guess what? Each one of us gets to be a leader. In what aspect? Well, it could be that you're a role model for being as simple as just being a teacher at a school, but it could be actually, I heard a talk the other day where they talked about a janitor in Johannesburg, and that janitor treated his office, which was a restroom at an airport hotel, I mean, at a airport restroom, and he would welcome and greet every person that came in as a guest in his office. He greeted them with a smile. He kept everything immaculate. He was positive. He knew when they interviewed him, he knew that people were tired, sometimes angry, sometimes stressed. And so he wanted to be their bright light in their day. So he showed up every day in his office, greeting people and treating them with respect. Who knew you would find a leader as a janitor in a restroom at an airport? But every single one of us has this power to lead with our words and how we show up. Mia shows up as a leader in really educating working parents and helping them turn their struggles into strengths. So she's an author, and book is here to help families. And what better way to start? I mean, obviously, if we're parents, we're not always married, but we are going to talk about marriage and relationships and how do we create that long lasting relationship and have conversations around our taboo topics. So I'm going to welcome Mia. Mia, thank you so much for being here this evening and
Hi,
sharing.
thank you.
So great to see you. I love having amazing conversations with people who inspire me. And I know we were chatting and we learned about some common denominators that we had. And I'm going to say advocacy for people to be better, to be stronger, to be leaders, and to enjoy the simplicity of life, right? Helps us come together and be strong. So I just want to say welcome and have all our guests welcome you. And we I would love to start a conversation with you about, well, maybe having you share a little bit about your personal story and about, I know I share just a little bit, but I'm sure you can share more with the audience about, why the topic of talking and talking about subject matters that may not be, I'm going to say, popular within even a duo conversation, and how we help, I don't want to say work around with it, I want to say regulate it so that it becomes a working relationship and a working conversation. So just, yeah, I think we can start a little bit with your background and why that might speak to you.
Sure. I mean, communication is the basis of all relationships, right? So you have to have communication, and it's not always easy, especially in relationships, especially if you're a parent, because all these relationships, they become fragmented when you have so many other interruptions on your time. And as you know, you start off and you get married and you're all bright eyed and excited for each other. And then, okay, now we're going to have a family, and then the baby time, and that's not as easy as everybody thinks. And then the toddler time, and all those phases of life that we go through with children. And it can put a stress on your marriage. It can definitely put a strain on it. And a lot of times you forget your goo goo eyes. You forget that you used to look in this person's eyes and like, oh, we used to like walk around the beach and that was the best thing ever. And now you're lucky if you say goodnight before your head hit the pillow because you're so exhausted from raising kids. So there's a lot that can come in between it. And the communication is just so key. And having open, honest communication is hard because things can get complicated. But if you can do that, that's probably the first thing that I would say is an important base to the marriage, because you have to have that trust that you can tell your partner something that might not be comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, having been married many years, and I'm going to say, even at some points, I think I was struggling in my marriage uh, longer than I was married, is what it felt like. And really about not knowing about having the conversations where, we have different backgrounds that come together, right? So we have at least two backgrounds that come together for most people. Nowadays, it could be three and four different backgrounds that come together for people. And so we each have our set of learning skills and set of knowledge. And then we expect, like you said, we have the goo goo eyes and we're like, oh, we're this one union. And isn't this amazing? Well, you talk about all the amazing stuff and we look at all the shiny parts of it. Oh my gosh. And just what's coming to me, and I'm going to say it in Italian, there's a saying is, oh my gosh, oh, dopo, and I'll translate. It says, dopo I confetti esci tutti i difetti. So what that translates to, and it's not so nice, but they have a saying around it. So every culture has something. And so what it is basically they say after the confetti, right? After we have like the party poppers and streamers and we're celebrating our relationship together, out comes all of our defects. It rhymes in Italian.
Oh,
So
fun.
basically, it sounds more fun and pretty, right? Doppi confetti, esci tutti i difetti. But the reality is, reality hits, is what the whole point is. And then, you know, how we show up, you know, conversations around, I talk about money a lot because that tends to be a huge arena where couples aren't conversing at all, right? They're not even having conversations. And I just kind of wanted to maybe even touch on that as far as your perspective of, you know, how that happens, as far as it becomes this topic that's just not discussed. So in other words, a taboo topic, or if it is discussed, I think the numbers and statistics are that in within the first 7 years, 67% of all marriages are ending up in relationship breakup, right? And that is likely, and there's two main reasons, right? And we know what the top two reasons are money, but number one is communication. So, in your eyes, how do we improve that communication? So, definitely communication around money. Um, Maybe some tips that you've had, or what are the taboo topics in the relationships, as far as like your marriage or other relationships that you've encountered that have been those taboo topics?
Specifically as it relates to money, it's like you said, you're bringing together several different points of view. So my parents were divorced, so that's two households. My husband's parents were married, so that's one household. So when we came together, that was three different financial household points of view that came together. And what actually helped us was a class that we took before we got married, where they told us have one checkbook, leave that checkbook at home. Now this was I mean, we had debit cards back then, so things were different, but the idea was don't have secrets around your money, right? If you have separate accounts, well, then there's things that your partner doesn't know. And the other thing is, it's very rare that two people make exactly the same amount of money and bring that to the marriage. So
Hmm.
sometimes that creates a strain on people, right? Sometimes the person who's making less money might feel like they're not doing their portion or doing their share. Um, and so it's like you have to figure out where you are with money. And if you're making different amounts, which probably 99.9% of marriages are making different amounts, you need to have this topic of conversation. You need to, figure out, do you have a plan for your money? How do you spend that money? How does the free part of the money get spent? Free, right? As if we all have all this extra free cash. But you need to have that conversation. And I have to tell you a story that really blew my mind when I was first in a mommy and me group. And this was before, I think, all the checking accounts became online and so easily accessible for everyone to see. Life was not so transparent. And this
Yes.
one woman said that in her checkbook register, she had to write Gelson's for $450, which Gelson's is a very expensive market if you're not familiar with the chain. So that might not be an extraordinary, buy around Christmas time, because she didn't want her husband to see that she was buying something for herself from Nordstrom's. So it kind of blew my mind when I heard this. I just thought, I can't even imagine that, deceiving my husband like that and not telling him. If I wanted something, I'm going to say, I don't ask permission to go buy something, but again, that's, every relationship is different, right? In some marriages, if one person's making the money and the other person's home or taking care of the children, they might feel like they need to ask to spend the money, and so you have to have this conversation around what do you feel about money. What was it that was maybe done in each of your own households might be a good way to start, to sort of take off the pressure, to realize what are we bringing to this picture together, and then you have a base to start from. So it's an interesting and tough conversation, but
I love that. I love the points that you're bringing up around that specifically, especially since really money tends to be the taboo one. And so I think as we're getting together in a relationship, and I'm going to say we're deciding to take the leap of really being together, we do having that conversation around money, being getting comfortable with the uncomfortable conversation.
right.
Uh, just like you said. So, and it could be simple questions, and again, without judgment, is really the important point. I think it's kind of like you almost need to make it maybe like a wine date night and say, you know what, tonight we're just going to have this conversation, no judgment, so that we can better understand where we're each coming from. And what did your parents argue around money? Did your grandparents argue around money? Did you even talk about money? What do you know? Because really 90% of Americans aren't even educated around money. And it's not our fault, in the sense of, where would you be getting this education? Would it be, unless you had a private course in college, most of us from kinder to college, we didn't have that. So already we have to understand that neither one of us came from a platform, unless you came from a family that already, it was part of their natural language and they spoke it, which is to your point. And, the example of having like one checkbook and being transparent with another. I mean, you're already being super vulnerable with each other when you're getting into a relationship. So it should be that all things, being transparent, being authentic, being genuine, literally will be the building block to the glue to keeping you together versus tearing you apart. We can actually change this around. And I know most people think that that would be an idea that is, I'm going to say it's a revolutionary idea, but I know that when you do have that conversation, so to your point on, sometimes one person in the relationship is making more money. However, if you and that other person talk about what matches that, so like, I'm going to say, still there are a lot of moms at home, correct? So there, as moms or stay-at-home dads, right, that are raising kids, the reality is, they might be the personal shopper for the family, the Uber driver for the family. They may be the accountant for the family, managing the back end while somebody's off working. So figuring out, there's about 16 different activities usually that a stay at home, when we think stay at home, we're thinking, oh, they're getting to rest and do nothing all day, which I think when people are working, and I know I've been on both sides, being at home sometimes can be more stressful than going into work. And that's another thing, is having the conversation where, and I've had this with my spouse too, is like, he's like, well, everything's great. And I'm like, because you're not at home right now. And he's not in the proximity to know. So having the openness to have the conversation. And with that gal of the $450 check to Gelson's, that is so hilarious. Um, that there's a term for it, and I actually learned about it, and that is financial infidelity. And there's actually a book on it. There's a psychology behind it, and sometimes we might be guilty of it without even knowing. And gosh, I can't even believe I'm going to share this on public air, but you laid the platform, and I'm going to be vulnerable and authentic, just like I share with everybody. Is when I started learning around money and wanted to learn around courses with it, I ended up charging these courses without telling my spouse because I knew he wouldn't say yes. And I didn't know at the time that that's what I was doing until somebody, they said, have you ever heard of being financially, living a life of financial infidelity? And it's the sin of omission, if you will. And just because you're omitting doesn't, that actually changes the whole game and playing field. So I think, like you said, the best thing to do is have conversations, sit down, and maybe the conversations are, look, I just kind of want to get a feel and know where you're at. I don't know if there are or words or tips that you can share around that aspect, just to kind of close out the money aspect. And if you had any other areas of like that might be a taboo topic to talk about, um, that you thought about with parenting as related to marriages.
Well, I mean, I just think something important is for people to know that you can't just give up on it when it gets hard. And what's going to happen is, a lot of people don't stick through it. And I mean, there are good reasons for divorce, right? There are many reasons that
Absolutely.
people, but in the event that you've just grown apart, I have this analogy that I really think it's within our DNA that we are not always like this with our spouse, right? We have what is in our DNA, right? We have this double helix. And what happens? Well, the helix goes out and it goes in. So there's times that you find with your spouse that you feel so connected and tight and wow, we're just on the same page and you're like this. But then that helix moves, right? And then you're kind of going in different directions maybe, and you're pursuing your own hobbies and what have you, which I think is very healthy. I think you need to give each other, yes, you're one partnership, but you need to each give each other your time to pursue your hobbies and refresh and re-energize and do what makes you happy. So the helix will go out, but then it's going to come back in together again. So don't be afraid in those times when it's out, but do try to bring it back together because it is worth it to stick together as long as there aren't any, mitigating circumstances, right? Abuse,
Right.
alcoholism, adultery, what have you, whatever topics that you really, those are serious ones. I don't advocate staying in a marriage if those things are going on. But what I want to say is when you feel this, this out part is go on that date night. Try and get back to the basics. Think about what you did when you were first meeting. When someone's new, you were just excited to sit with them on the street corner or, at a cafe or at a restaurant or walk on a beach. Go back to those basics, right? Where no one is around you. And if you do have children, one tip that we learned that we like to follow is when you're on your date, you only get the first 10 minutes to talk about the children or the child. That's it. You have 10 minutes and that's it. No more discussion about the kid or children. And therefore, the rest of the day, it has to be about you guys. It has to be about you two and what you're feeling, or, not just how was your day, honey. I mean, this is the time to get into it, right? And take those moments to do that because that's really going to keep you connected. Because guess what? One day, I'm going to speak in the plural, those children are going to grow up and go to college and you're going to become empty nesters. Well, if you haven't been solidifying your relationship before that, then you wake up and go, oh, hi, who are you? Do I know you? I mean, we sleep next to each other on the pillow, but do I really know you? And so I think that's why a lot of empty nesters experience divorce because they have had so many things. We've all been so busy running on this wheel of life that COVID has thankfully given us a little break from. But I really encourage you to try to have that time with your spouse. Don't fight in front of the children. If you want to fight, do it on your date night. If you have something you want to say that's, confident, complicated, don't do it in front of the kids, right? That's just what I was taught. That's what I believe in. Like, you're going to have conversations that aren't always pretty. On the other side, when our kids would walk in the kitchen and see us kissing, they'd go, ew, Mommy, Daddy, what are you doing? And we would laugh and we would still be hugging and looking at them and saying, you know what? You should be thankful for this because not every marriage is like this. Not everybody wants to kiss their spouse. And so we didn't shy from like kissing each other, not crazy things in front of the kids, of course, but something like that, a simple show of affection. But so, when you're on that simple date, doesn't have to be an expensive date because you're already paying for a babysitter. We get that. So, go have that conversation, talk about the kids for 10 minutes, and then whoop, zip it up on that next topic. I want to share one other cultural thing since you shared your Italian saying. I'm half Armenian. And so when I got engaged, my uncle said something to me that I thought was very profound and over the years has proved to be wonderful. He said, in life, marriage is like a rope. Okay. So let's see, try and use a cord here. Okay. So you've got your rope, and if your partner's pulling it too tight, then like let it loose a little, right? Like give your partner a little room so that rope can be moving a little bit. But if your partner's holding it too loose, maybe you need to tighten your end to make it a little stronger, make it a little bit more even. And so honestly, we have seen that a lot in our marriage, and there's times where, I'll be too strong and he'll be too loose, or he'll be, vice versa. And so to have that freedom to come and go and be able to tell each other, okay, I'm pulling the rope tight right now. And you can joke about it, like, okay, I'm going to pull that rope tight right now and say what it is. You need to reel in your spending, right? Or maybe it's, you're a little too loose with the kids, letting them run around and stay up, letting the 5-year-old stay up till 11 o'clock. You need to tighten that up a little bit. So it's this give and play and this respect, hopefully, that you have with each other so you can be honest and talk to each other about these things.
I love it. I've been taking some notes because there's several points, and I can't believe how fast the half hour goes together because this is just such an amazing topic, and I wish I had someone to talk to. And I'm going to say, definitely reach out to Mia. I'm going to put her LinkedIn here so you can reach her through LinkedIn. And I will also give a phone number for Mia Tepper. And basically, you text your name to 310-560-2786 for a 30-minute conversation and get more tips. But to your points, I'm going to summarize as we close out is, so basically you're two individuals becoming one. Always remember that you're two individuals. Give each other space to continue to grow as those individuals. Remember that life is that ebb and flow, just like the tide. And, I think one of the tips that I really love that I shared that really helped me continue to have what I call CPR in my marriage, give my marriage CPR, especially in the tough times, is to look at pictures, not with anger, but to go remember what positive times were. And so I look at my wedding picture, literally I have it in my room every day. Even though I look completely different, I tap into who that girl was and how she felt about that guy and ask empowering questions. And by the way, CPR stands for being consistently showing up for your spouse. Remember to look out as well as take care of self-care of yourself, because that can affect the way you feel. So you got to be mindful to care for yourself. Be persistent. Keep persevering with that relationship and be resilient about it. Remember your why of why you got married together. And sometimes if there's friction in the energy, take a pause. You don't have to disrupt everything. You can take each a pause. And remember that each of you put in 100%, 100%, and then ask one another, I was wondering why you were letting the kids go a little bit further or doing more. It's something I'm not comfortable with. How can we have a conversation? And so this way we empower one another and break through the taboo talks. So Mia, I just want to say thank you so, so much for being here. This went quick. We'll have to definitely discuss more because really marriage is so much more involved in parenting and it has a ripple effect on everybody. So with that, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you being here. Oh, and the other thing that I wanted to share, 5 things really quick. Explore in your marriage how it can be joyous. Expand in how you can grow together. engage in actions with one another, elevate one another, and simply enjoy the simple things in life. All right. With that, Mia, thank you so much. And I wish you abundant blessings, and we will talk again. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. All
Thank you. I
right.
appreciate it. Don't forget to reach out to me for your free consultation. And my
Yes.
parenting book, the website is sincelifesnotlinear.com. And I don't have a link up there to pre-order the book, but we'll get one going soon. So if you want some information, just text me your name and let's get talking if I can help you in any way with any parenting issues. My kids range from 18 to 25. Growing up, I'm one of in a family of 17 children, so I did it all wrong before I did it all right and had 4 of my own. So I'm excited to share my experiences with you and hope I can help you over some of the rough spots. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Mia. All right. Have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.